Hello and welcome back to The Dive. Season 2, Episode 3, CLG is 0-2, TSM is 0-2, KT beat SKT. I'm Jad, joined by Kobe and Azale. What is happening?
Well, we also have patch 8.2, so we'll touch on that a little bit. But yeah, probably going to be going over that first week of the North American LCS. But let's start with global news. You touched on it, Jats. SKT with some problems. Not only did they have that 90-plus minute loss to Jinair that everyone loved, but KT finally was able to beat SKT and called it at the first episode that we had of this year. Willing to bet on them this time because SKT not looking that great after the offseason with all the shuffles they did. And the problems really do seem to be manifesting in these games.
KT is just trying to build up your hopes so you can be even more disappointed when they still don't qualify
beat
for
SKT
Worlds at the end of the year.
In the first best of 3 of the regular season. Like, yeah, we got him. That's what we really want.
Gotta prove my point as soon as it was done.
Deft is crying in the interview. He says, last year, our team constantly lost. Today, I became emotional because I felt that our team broke through the limits that contained us. I mean, this SKT squad sucks compared to all the other squads that they've had, pretty much. Like, this is probably the worst iteration that they have run. So it's surprising to me that Deft was, like, feeling that emotional about beating them. But I guess, maybe it's just like one of those things that was a mental block for them. People talk about their demons or whatever, right? Like the people that they can never beat. And maybe he felt that was SKT, regardless of the players on the team. But I mean, Faker's still playing great, but it kind of feels like what everyone complains about in solo queue, right? Everyone's like, it's 1v9, everyone's speeding.
Yeah, their team is a little bit of a mess right now. And it's early on in the season.
Yeah.
As far as jumping to conclusions go, we know they've been to 4 straight world championships and 3 out of 4 finals, right? They're going to be okay. I do want to talk. I think they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to have that conversation right now? Is SKT dying?
No, it's not.
Is
it
over?
It's not that.
Is it too early to say?
But it's like I'm just thinking: is Wolf in jungle? Like, is he the one who's is that going to be the solution? Right? Like, maybe there'll be roster shuffles and stuff. Maybe something like that happens.
Ambition went from mid lane to jungle, and then he won the world championship.
Like
there
7 years.
Boom! There's proof.
There you go.
That right there is all
just
the
like
proof that you
SKT
could possibly
wins worlds.
But yeah, I mean,
I'm just kidding.
Oh Jesus, get me out. But yeah, I mean, we were also not only the KT game, but we went back and watched at least some of the highlights from the 90+ minute.
I watched the whole thing.
Jinair loss.
Yeah.
You watched the whole thing on double speed
yesterday.
or something?
You watched it on 0.25 speed.
Yeah. I spent 6 hours yesterday watching it on the slowest possible setting. No, I watched the whole thing. It was 1.5 or 2x speed. The other night, just because I wanted to see history be made, and it was so interesting, right? So a 95-minute game was the longest game in League of Legends history, and a lot of people, I think, want to point to the meta for slowing that game down. That game was not the meta's fault. Like that was very much kind of a perfect storm of things coming together. Like if you pick the AD carry that is best at stalling games, it's Sivir. You pick the mid laner that is best at stalling games. It's Azir, right? They had both of those things, and then add on top of that both teams had pretty good disengage and somewhat lackluster engage. And Jinair just held in their base for 45 minutes. It was great.
And it just seemed like a massive amount of mistakes, to be honest. Like from SKT trying to close out the game. There's multiple times. It's Bang is playing Ezreal, right? And he's eating forward into the team, then getting caught by Ornn and dying multiple times at their base.
There's like the same highlight 3 times in a row.
Exactly.
Honestly.
It really did seem like a super messy game. You have to think that when you have inhibitors down for that long, you should be able to at least there was an open nexus at one point with all 4 SKT members, 4 out of their 5 still alive and in the base. And Superman is coming in from all sides, and they decide to base. And to me, it's like you can suicide and probably right-click on the Nexus and maybe end it at that point. Like a captain with Lich Bane, you're doing so much damage to it.
That just reminds me of the one where Faker's walking in through bottom lane, and he literally just walks in to 3 Jinair members and dies instantly, and you're just like, what's going on? So everybody on that in that whole game, was making mistakes, obviously, but I like Jai's point of it was a combination of yes, there is more protection for AD carries available right now with the Targon's upgrades and all that type of stuff, which does kind of add to delaying it. But not only was it Azir and Sivir for wave clearing, but Ornn, his ultimate is so incredibly good for team fighting, and when you're pinned inside your base, like their only hope is like these big Ornn ultimates are going to cut off people or hit bang like we're talking about, and taking out the enemy AD carry, which they were able to do a bunch.
Well, also in that game, so the new SKT support effort, since Wolf was role swapped to jungle in this game, was preventing the second activation of Ornn's ultimate with his Janna tornadoes really reliably, like 80% of the time. I was
not
super
enough
impressed.
To save bang.
Not enough to save the game. I just want to go over a few fun facts since this was a historic game, the longest game in League of Legends history. 1 hour, 34 minutes, and 40 seconds. Teddy had 1,465 CS and 43.8 thousand gold on his own. SKT killed 13 inhibitors. There were 9 Barons taken and 10 Dragons, if you include all the elders that were taken.
Yeah.
And it seemed like SKT had almost all of those Barons.
SKT had 6.
Okay.
And Jin had 3.
Yeah. It's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to call it a good game.
No,
but,
I mean, when I hear stats like that, I just kind of go, oh, neat. Like, you're not impressed by any of these records, right? Most CS ever. I've got 15. Good. I'm like, okay, you played the longest game ever. Like,
well, Papa Smithy had the pretty funny quote that he's like, the guy who's 400 CS behind is the second most.
Papa Smithy was getting real funny, and I've definitely been there in those super long games where you just start going nuts.
Yeah,
but. Yeah. An hour and a half, and he's doing the super long LCK workload right now. So he was just coming out with all kinds of funny lines.
A lot of times he's working like 5 or 6 days a week. This was his second best of 3 of the day. He'd been on air for like 6 hours, and it was even funnier because I was watching at like 1.5 to double speed, so it sounded like he was angry than he was. And he was like, Jin, they're never going away. They're never going to get relegated. They always play long games, and I just have to work 6 more days, and this game's never going to end. And I'm like, he is just trapped in this game forever, never able to cast. Because watching it felt like it was forever. 3 inhibitors were down at like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And you don't think you're going to have another 45 minutes after that happens. I love watching these games from a distance. I do not want them to become common.
I think they can be kind of fun. Like the ending of those games always feels really exciting though, because the casters are super hyped up when it ends because like, oh my God, like something finally happened. It's extra exciting, but definitely a funny game.
I think it does transition pretty well though into like the big topic right now. Of course, it's the beginning of the season for competitive. So everyone's talking about this meta that has developed and a lot of their frustration points. It was interesting though. We also have a very popular tweet here from Double Lift that made it to the top of Reddit. Talking about Stopwatch, right? Because a lot of people instantly were jumping on blaming Stopwatch because they see almost every pro take it. There's like 6, 7, or 8 of them sometimes even in a game.
Do you want Stopwatch stats?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not that interested, but I'm sure there are people that are super interested in the stats.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay,
we will allow it.
640 data points, so it's NA LCS, EU LCS, LCK, and LMS. 197 players took Inspiration Primary, so 59.4% of those players took Magical Footwear and Perfect Timing, which is Stopwatch. And 296 players took Inspiration Secondary. So all in total, like over half of the world is building Stopwatch in their games. To kind of go into more detail on whether or not it's like slowing down or speeding up the early game, I'm actually in the camp that even though it can be used aggressively to turret dive and then clear aggro, it is more likely to prevent a kill than to allow you to get a kill. Would you agree?
Well, it's definitely slowing down the game because whether or not you're going to end up with a kill in the end with your turret dive and swapping aggro in the second place, it's going to take longer because you have to wait out both stasises, the offensive people and the defensive people. And it does allow for a lot more plays where you're holding and you have to worry about exact information on where the enemy jungler is and stuff like that for roams and teleports to come down.
Yeah,
because
buys more time.
That buying time, that delaying, if you have, it buys enough time for most of a teleport channel to come down, or a Warwick, right, who's got blood scent running over. Oh, great, now he can get to the scene. So it definitely changes the game. I do like some of the cases. Like I think it's super neat some of the plays that you can pull off.
Mhm.
Some of the plays that you can pull off are not super neat at all, like Ryze being able to just ultimate and use it before he's able to build a, his Onyas or something. I feel like
that's one I think everyone agrees with. Exactly. It's not fun.
And there's more that are like that. They aren't all like that. Some of them are super cool, right? Going in for, a huge play and pulling off a stopwatch play does feel good, but it's definitely just too prevalent right now. I don't think it's the main cause of slowing the game down, though.
So, I mean, the tweet from Double specifically is, I think Stopwatch is fun to play with and against. Don't know why it's being seen as such a huge problem. Every AD goes Relic, 3-pot, Overheal, and Fleetfoot, plays the same 5 champions, and focuses on a rune that is actually skillful to use. So I'm kind of in agreement with him. I think that it is much more like League of Relic Shield and League of Fleetfoot than it is about the Stopwatch, because I do think that Stopwatch, when used poorly, it gives you very little. So yes, there is still the sell cost that you're always going to get something from it. You can make that argument, but like so many times I see this ability used, especially talking about like solo queue and things like this, where it's like the person uses it in a situation where they're already guaranteed to be dead, right? And all it's doing is wasting the ability. But when people use it very well, both aggressively, to reset aggro on turret dives, as you were mentioning, I think that can be pretty fun. It's a pretty high moment. Like if you use this and you immune a Malphite ultimate or something like that, like Orianna Shockwave or whatever, like it does.
If you're Zach and you're ulting, it looks great, and then you're pretty.
There you go. Like it makes me feel like I can try for more aggressive plays sometimes, which is what I like about it. But obviously, yes, there's the other side too, where you can, people can use it to turtle more and things like that. But to me, the meta being slow is so much more just about the Relic Shield and Overheal and all this stuff, because it makes it so you can play hyper carries, and when you play hyper carries, you naturally want to play a slower game and get to late game.
Well, on top of playing hyper carries, you're playing hyper carries that instead of starting with the BF Sword Rush, you're starting with the Targon's Rush, which makes you have less damage and more health on both sides. Like, just think of all the games we watched last week. How many 2v2 fights were you really seeing when compared to normal?
Yeah.
It was so greatly decreased, and that wasn't because of Stopwatch. But I would say that as far as dives in the top and mid lane, like that was also decreased by Stopwatch. So it's one of those things where, like, maybe you're saying 70% of the slowness is Relic Fleet and 30% is Stopwatch. And slow doesn't mean bad either.
Yeah.
Right? Because Stopwatch, as Double have said, having those skillful moments can be really cool and expressive.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, sometimes slow is definitely super boring. I think so. A lot of people are.
If it's the only option,
yeah,
I would
exactly.
say it's super boring.
There you go. A lot of people are really focused on, and I think a lot of people are in agreement of the Relic Shield thing, and that's already on the patch as of today. 8.2 has been released. It's not competitive yet, but there were nerfs to Relic Shield as far as range, execute, and now it turns into sight zone instead of even being able to upgrade into this big old shield, right, when you finish the quest. But also, I think in the current meta, another one of the issues that I was talking about on the cast like last week is the mid lane being so stagnant.
Yeah.
Azir,
Ryze, Zoe, Malzahar.
Exactly. And it's that's when it starts to get really frustrating. And when you also have, let's see, 8.2, let me check on the nerf here, because they only nerfed like one of them, right?
Yeah, those 4 champions just
Malzahar got nerfed.
Yeah, Malzahar.
Those 4 are all 70% or above in pro play. Azir the highest at 91%. Then it drops down from there to 32% for Vlad, 13% for Cass. So it really is just those big 4.
Yeah, and Malzahar got nerfed. So, and the other 2 kind of got out of free. And actually, with the Nunu buffs, Azir is going to be even better. So
Azir's probably going to be banned.
It seems like that Trinity doesn't seem like it's going anywhere, save for Malzahar.
You want to talk about patch 8.2 now? Since
Yeah.
it did release this morning. We're filming this before we've had a chance to play on the patch. So it's 11:30 a.m. Pacific time.
So, I mean, there's obviously a couple really big changes, I think, in this patch. It's the support quests are now changed to Sightstone, so that did go in. So talking a lot about, the Relic Shield starts and things for AD carries, that's going to be going away. The other one, there are individual champion changes that we can talk about, but as far as like overall game picture, the thing that's so big to me is actually the single target spells now causing minion aggro. There's a few champions that I think that really, really strongly affects that didn't necessarily get compensated in the patch, and I'm assuming that it's going to be something like, okay, hey, we'll see how bad it is for those guys, and then maybe we'll buff them up later. But Cassidy is something that I thought of immediately. Cassio, Pantheon, those are the ones that people talk about a lot. But as someone who actually likes playing Cassidy quite a bit, I immediately feel like, oh God, I probably can't actually play this champion mid lane anymore, because what the change is when you use a single target spell, aka Pantheon Spear, the Cassidy, Pulse Orb, the Q, you now get aggro. It counts like an auto attack. So these champions that use them consistently to harass Cassiopeia, Twin Fangs, you're going to be pulling a minion aggro constantly. It's going to make it extremely hard to actually make those trades advantageous, especially for someone like Cassidy or Pantheon who are already in melee range, basically of those minions to do the harassment. You'll be pulling minion aggro and taking a lot more damage. So I think that is like such a huge systemic change that it feels weird to see it kind of in the middle of the season for me. Like that, it's a bit concerning, because I do think it changes how a number of matchups are played.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually that many matchups though. Like the few that you just named right there, I feel like are the big ones.
Nami's another big one, I think, for support. Like I don't think it's necessarily completely like game breaking, but it's something that I do think you have to relearn some of the things, and it's gonna feel bad if you feel like you died or lost because
Right. Well,
Yeah.
So for instance, like one champion that people brought up a lot in regards to this change was like Vladimir.
Yep.
They're saying, oh man, you're walking through for your Q and you don't want to get harassed. The number of times I feel like that you Q and don't auto afterwards was really low. Like it was pretty rare that you'd Q and to be like, I don't want to auto him though in case I get minions. I think was actually really, really low, and I don't think it's going to change the matchups as much as people think. I think Pantheon for sure. I think level 1 Cassiopeia for sure.
Kassadin definitely.
Right? I think Kassadin for sure as well, because that's a melee champion.
Nami,
you can't trade with an auto. Nami, I'm a little bit less so actually, because like yes, you can bounce your W to him, but you're so far away anyway.
Can't you just get in range and cast on yourself and have it bounce? And would the
I think that would
still think it would.
I think that would still.
But I'm not positive on that.
Yeah,
I do think the Vladimir thing, I'll test that a little bit, because I do think a lot of times people stand in the menu wave, use their autos for last hitting, and are trying to use their Q only to kind of harass. But like I do agree, it's not going to change every matchup, and it's not always going to be super big. LeBlanc is another one with like the sigil, right? The Q. So it's just one of those changes that maybe it doesn't end up feeling like a big deal, but it's something that I think for pro play especially, you end up feeling like, hey, I have to really change. I have to really relearn some of these matchups and make sure that I understand when I win, when I lose, what trades I can do, what trades I can't do, because that's a big deal, right? It's a systemic change.
I feel like it makes more sense though. I feel like it's more intuitive. That is something that a case by case basic, like we only think that they're going to be like super big impact on a few champions that they can then fix and balance if the really big cases are super struggling.
Yeah.
But to me, it does make more sense to be able to play that way, right? And as of right now, like, or at the beginning of the season especially, like when Pantheon with Aerie and the free mana and stuff, like that just feels so garbage to play against, and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't trade with this guy without him getting minion aggro. That's not fair. So kind of level the playing field and then balance tweak after that feels like a pretty good strategy to me. It also like re-emphasizes everyone needs to learn about minion aggro dropping, going into brush, dropping line of sight, and kind of the fundamentals for everybody will be more similar.
And I know it's really, really early numbers, but I'm looking at like Lawlytics for here. And the number of casting games on the new patch is still only 8,000, but it has Kassadin's win rate dropping by 0.3. Vladimir went down 0.8, and that's with also the removal of the Frost Queen's claim line, which I feel like is a bigger nerf than the stuff. So I think that they're like, it definitely is a nerf to those champions. Like, no doubt. If a spell didn't give minion aggro before and it did now, it's going to hurt the champion. But I think the extent that a lot of people are reacting to it is overblown. I think for the most part, it's just a logical change. You're going to learn how to play around it. And the number of times that it would actually proc, I think are actually really low.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about on patch 8.2? Because there's a lot of stuff.
To me, one thing that really stood out as well, I mean, we did talk about Sightstone stuff. I don't know if you guys want to get more into that, but something that did kind of stand out a lot is actually the Aftershock change. I think that, so they reduced the damage a lot on this, and, a lot of people are kind of talking about it from that lens, as far as the fact that it's like, oh, well, it does a lot less damage now. So yes, it is less of an aggressive thing, but the armor and MR that you get at base on it is pretty insane now. So what it used to be is you got 20 flat resistances. Now it's going up to
Plus
70
30%.
plus 30%. So now it's going up to 70 to 120, but it no longer increases resistance by 30%. So like the low level bases of this are pretty massive. It's kind of interesting. It's more supposed to be about the defensive, whereas the damage went down from 4140 to 10 to 120. So
right.
It does the damage scales with AD and AP now, but like I was talking a little bit with Kevin Flowers actually about this, and just like for early ganking, like that makes you so incredibly tanky. Like, for these sorts of plays, like for trading, for if you're a tanky jungler and you come in, you progress.
It's like 40% damage reduction.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, your base values are like you're in the 30s from 20s to 30s and stuff like that on your armor and MR, and you're getting 70 flat on both. Like that makes you so incredibly hard to kill. I even think there's a pretty big potential for like enabling early turret dives a lot more heavily. Especially if you look at someone like Sejuani who already has her armor passive, in addition to an Aftershock, something like that can be pretty strong. And yes, the damage going down is a pretty big deal, but I was just like that jumped out to me as something that could be really strong.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of because Guardian got changed as well.
Yeah,
and pretty much all Resolve supports were switched to Guardian anyways because of the move speed and the large like random shielding, and the cooldown at level 1 went up like 25 seconds on Guardian.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Even if the base shield did go up by 10, I think that supplants for Aftershock on most melees that have the proccable CC. Because when you got people like Leona who are still taking Guardian, that's probably a sign that there needs to be some tweaking done there. So yeah, I agree. Aftershock is definitely more takeable on those initiatives.
Yeah, and it is really more geared toward. I mean, it's flat stats now instead of the increase. So junglers that want to skirmish, like this is actually very strong, right? There's always the choice between taking something like Electrocute for a little bit of extra damage for skirmishing, or if you can get this, they literally added at level 1, this is before it even scales, 50 extra flat resistances, and then it gets better there, going up per level. So, I mean, it's interesting to me because maybe I'll play some more, like things like Vi or something like that.
Wouldn't you just take Electrocute or Dark Harvest on Vi, though? I'm just kidding.
I don't know, because to me, that is so much defense.
Especially, it's a good point because for someone who's not building defense, the percent increase wasn't really that attractive
but
anyway.
Flat armor, even if you're not building...
You could build Ghostblade Vi or whatever, and you still get flat armor.
Meanwhile, I feel like the only ones that are kind of sad about it would be like Sejuani, because you're building pure defense, and
later in the game you'll be sad about it, but early in the game it's still going to make you more tanky.
Well, the thing is with their passive, it like was insane.
Oh yeah, good point.
Because those are usually both at the beginning, and the 30% was nuts. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how prevalent that does become.
Are you going to play Nunu, Kobe?
No, I think it's going to be banned literally every single game, because in the higher ELO games right now, Azir is insane, and this is like the perfect storm of buffs for Nunu plus Azir. Like giving him all this extra AP on top of the attack speed is just completely nuts. And like I said
so
before,
Blood Boil now additionally grants ability power, 40% increase, but that's capped on rank of Blood Boil. 40 at the first rank and 120 at the max rank is as much AP as you can give someone. I know some people at first read this as 120%. It's not, but it's still a lot of AP. And then on top of that, Nunu has like more early game power because his consume gives him magic damage on auto attacks.
Yeah, it feels like they almost added another half a spell onto his spell with this buff. And yeah, like I was talking about before, like mostly in the high elo games, like Azir is either picked or banned. So he's in a lot of games right now. So like things like him or even Kog'Maw, which is also insane right now. It also has some AP ratio.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems...
I think Kale as well is someone who really would.
And I think even the early stats coming out about the win rates for Nunu already is insane. So yeah, I think he'll be permabanned.
One weird thing about Nunu,
that's all I have to say.
For competitive as well, right? Like I think it's going to be super prevalent.
I wonder if he'll be, because I remember Nunu was at like 58 or 59 last year, and he was kind of seen in competitive. Like contracts pulled him out a few times for like the level 4 counter jungling against Lee Sin. They're really hesitant because I do think naturally Nunu's win rate is inflated because he's so simplistic. Like I farmed up, I was a tank in team fights, and I gave everybody stats.
That's what everyone says, but his actual his mastery curve is one of the steepest in league. Even though he's extremely easy to play mechanically, you have to know where to be, what to do, because there's not a massive amount of inherent power in you just like walking and punching people and pressing your buttons. Like that's what I think the skill is in pro play.
But then why is his win rate so high but doesn't make the transition to competitive?
Well,
I mean, I think it's a very different style than a lot of those.
I think another thing that adds to his potency is the importance of counter jungling right now. It's actually super strong. Like I have been 3 levels up and been able to hold 3 levels, which is insane after playing last season, where it was like 1 level pretty much permanent, 1 or 2 levels between that. Now, like it's pretty like common to have like a 2-level lead over the losing jungler, basically. And with Nunu and people like Ivern and stuff who can counter jungle super effectively, like you can actually hold a 3-level lead, which feels so incredibly strong.
A lot of the pros are talking about it as well. I saw Dardoch and Contracts and a number of Amidios and another junglers.
A lot of those are going to be initial, like, I hate Nunu, and I'm on that train. I'm the leader of the I hate Nunu
You're
train,
the conductor.
But I will also play Nunu.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. What happened to the Nunu lifestyle from last season? You're like, it's a way of life.
Yep, I mean, that's exactly true, right? I hate it, but I'm the first one to play it if it's going to give me ELO.
Self-loathing, but you'll be a high-rated self-loathing player. Yeah, okay.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I also think that this was a little bit of a misfire. Like, Nunu was not popular at all, right? No one was playing him, but I still saw Guardian Nunu as being pretty good before any of these changes happened. And this is a big buff. So
a lot of time on Nunu.
It's one of those ones.
Sorry, man. He's potentially the most. Like, can you think of a champ that would be more powerful after these patch notes? Like, we saw giant Ezreal nerfs with 20 damage off a Mystic Shot and Kleptomancy nerfs.
The Jinx stuff is pretty interesting. Ornn could actually be hurt pretty badly, perhaps by his changes. That's a big one for competitive. The Ornn one is something that's a lot of people talked about as well, because they removed the Unstoppable from his W, which a lot of people were unhappy with. My understanding is that just in general, this was not like one of those changes where they thought, oh, okay, this is the only way to nerf Ornn. It was more they were unhappy with it as a design choice. They realized that, hey, this actually we just didn't think that this mechanic worked out very well. So that was my understanding of why the designers, they thought they should take it out, is they just were unhappy with W as a mechanic. Unstoppable was unfair or whatever. But people in general felt that this was the skill expression more for Ornn, is timing your W very well to, oh, you immune the Jack's Counter-Strike and now you screwed him over, or things like this. And that is gone. So I certainly sympathize that it does feel bad as an Ornn player, or as any player, when you feel like your skill expression is taken away.
Agreed.
But I do think that in combination with the ultimate cooldown nerf is certainly like pretty big. 30 seconds more cooldown at max rank. Yes, there's going to be CDR and everything, but that in combination with the W feels like this could knock him down pretty heavily in priority, especially when there's the Braum answer already is very well documented. Now you're talking about people doing this on Janna. If someone shows you that you can consistently interrupt the Janna,
I feel like the Janna thing was really good.
Yeah,
Janna play.
You're gonna see more people try to emulate it, though. Is my point for pro play, right? Like when someone's like, "Holy crap, you can do that!" You better be sure that your support player should be in there practicing. Exactly.
Yeah, and I think the ultimate was the biggest reason to take, like, the team fighting power from his ultimate was absolutely insane. So yeah, these are definitely going to hurt Ornn quite a lot. As far as solo queue, the 2 most popular, Evelynn and Kha'Zix junglers, definitely both got some pretty big nerfs. So
what do you think about Runic Echoes for solo queue? Like that, it's now goes 25% missing mana restore instead of 15. Do you think that's going to bring anyone back in it at all?
I think the offset of Frostfang not being good in the jungle is going to cancel it out, because that was one thing that I think was either buffing up or keeping a lot of the AP junglers afloat, was that you just build Frostfang and get a ton of free gold and damage on ganks, and now you no longer get the gold generation and no longer turns into a Frost Queens. I mean, that hurts. That hurts a lot of champions in a way. Almost every mid laner had transitioned into finding a way to get Frost Queens in their build now, and that's gone because the gold generation items were just kind of busted. So an equalizing factor now with those. Like, I think it's the right change in the long term.
I was trying to think of any AP junglers that are just like super mana hungry that could maybe get something from it, but I don't really play a lot of
I don't
AP
play
junglers.
low tier, bro. I only play top tier champions.
Like,
So it's only Nidalee and Eve is that you're
those are the only two APs.
And they don't really have that.
And they don't have any.
Issues,
I never have mana problems.
Amumu is one.
Even Elise.
That's true.
Amumu is one who, if you wanted to go Runic Echo Sunfire Cape, is a little bit better now.
Yeah.
But like, dude, you're still playing Amumu. You're gonna get invaded early. You're gonna be useless until your Runic Echoes. Like, he's.
Yeah. What did you guys think about the Jinx changes? That was another one that was kind of interesting to me because it wasn't just a numbers change. It's actually, they're changing a little bit the way that it works. So the minigun passive, like the attack speed passive, does not stack anymore. The attack speed goes up more heavily with your Q level, like not instead of your character levels, it's with your Q upgrades or whatever. So, at max rank, it's 130% instead of 70%. So that's up a lot. But the big change is that you're supposed to be kind of like more powerful during the get excited. So the idea is that it's to make you more snowbally when you actually get that first kill or that tower kill. So you're no longer capped on attack speed during get excited. So it's almost kind of like a lethal tempo type thing. Your AD like base damage is down, but there's heavier scaling. So from what my interpretation of this is that it's going to be like super strong late game. People talking about it as even more heavy scaling, like that Jinx would just be the ultimate scaling AD carry. And if we're still in a meta that's slow, despite Relic Shield starts going away and that sort of thing, this could be something that pushes her back into competitive play.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how I feel about making her even more snowbally because already she was like the champion for snowballing and like trying to get that kill, and then once she gets excited, you have a very strong late game with rockets
uncapped
and stuff
attack
like
speed.
that. And now now it's interesting, right? Because you wonder about how powerful it is, but then it does focus kind of both teams' plans around we do not want to let Jinx get that first kill. Like this is on the level of classic Katarina resets or like the old Katarina resets and stuff like that in team fights. It's like this becomes another little goal as far as the team fight goes of not letting any low health members give that extra power over in the team fight because this is going to be very strong if you can actually get it though.
Yeah, when I see that she loses 5 AD at level 1 though, when she was already getting bullied in lane, this is like, I hate to say it, but this is the thing you play when you're much better than everyone else in the game and you want to make sure you carry. Because I feel like equal skill AD carries, you're just going to stomp Jinx into the ground in the lane
Especially if you don't have Relic Shield, right? If you can't actually survive laning phase, then your late game scaling.
I don't see how Jinx gets there in like an even matchup now.
The other thing I'm not really sure about, I haven't actually done any math on this, is like how much attack speed do you have to actually build with the minigun attack speed and everything before you can actually go above a cap, right? Because it uncaps your attack speed, but Get Excited does not give you attack speed. So it's like, do you need 2 Zeals and Zerkers plus max rank? Do you need 1 Zeal plus max rank minigun attack speed? Because it gives you 130%.
Yeah, someone will math this for me, but like based on Trist with Rapid Fire giving 90%, if this is 130, I think with like RFC Shiv or like Hurricane if you're Jinx, 2 Zeal upgrades and Berserker Greaves with max rank Q and high level, I think you overcap.
Yeah, I would imagine you
would. That's all great. I'm just going to have
a lot of
my
math.
AD carry play Kog'Maw, and then we win as soon as he gets Rage Blade anyway.
As long as you play Nunu, then you're in. Want to move on to NA LCS though?
Sure.
Patch will be hitting live, obviously, when this episode is out. It's already there, but competitive will be next week. This week of NA LCS will still be on patch 8.1. And we had a lot of interesting results. I was doing predictions on the analyst desk, and I have the nicest way to frame my 6-win, 4-loss predictions. I predicted every single game right, unless CLG or TSM were involved. Because I've caught all of them.
But how did Kubo do?
1-1. 50% win rate.
Pretty good.
Same win rate as Mark Z.
Yeah. And in the games that you both predicted, is he beating you or is he tied?
No, Kubo's. I'm trying to think.
Kubo, this is Dad's dog, by the way. Everyone's like, what is going on?
Yeah, there's like
now?
Instagram and Twitter. Each day, my dog will be predicting the game of the week, so to speak, or the match of the day.
So whatever game you choose.
Yeah.
Freak's Dog as well is also
Freak's Dog is 0-2.
these.
So
That's unlucky.
also for predictions with me and Mark Z, I have this idea. I'm not sure if we're going to do it. We're going to have my predictions, Mark's predictions, and a coin's predictions because we've been so close to 50%. Let's just start. Like, what's happening in the league? Should you be overreacting to these early results?
Give it some time.
Because you guys both had TSM number 1 in the power rankings.
Yep.
They're 0-2. I had CLG number 1 in the power rankings.
They're 0-2.
Why did they go 0-2? Let's just start there.
I mean, so one of the things that, I talked about last week with TSM is I didn't think, even if Mike Young is not playing like at like prodigy level or whatever, even if he's not playing like he's playing whatever his skill floor is, that I thought TSM would still do well. But what I think I did not really take into consideration is I was not expecting Sven and Mithy to look like they are. That to me has been the biggest kind of letdown for TSM. Is that their bot lane has not looked good. I mean, this is a bottom lane that there's extremely high expectations for. These are not rookies. These guys are vets. They have played for a really long time. They have been very good for a really long time. And they have not really been performing. In the Team Liquid game, they got slammed early, and you could say, okay, well, unlucky, snowballed, whatever. But when they lost to FlyQuest, this was a 6-item Kog'Maw who had every opportunity to do something in this game, who had every opportunity to kind of get involved in the game. So it felt like in the first game, they kind of failed early. In the second game, they kind of failed late, and they've been kind of missing.
Yeah, I mean, I think they talked about like not having a lot of time to practice or, whatever. So the coordination and communication like issues that are very apparent in these games, people can kind of cite those things as spawning them, but it is kind of disconcerting after they recruited in the offseason specifically for communication.
Yeah.
For this sort of super high ceiling, very controlled and precision play and stuff like that. And yet I'm not even giving them that early game lost Liquid or whatever a pass. Like Mithy roaming up, it was like this moment where skirmish with Mike Young and Bjergsen up at the top side, and they disengage, but Mithy had already roamed up behind the dragon. So then they have to use the Kalista ultimate and a bunch of stuff to get him out, and then they get dove down bottom as well. And it's like, that's not unlucky, right? Those are pretty big misplays.
You're on the same page.
And those are the things that they were specifically recruited these guys for. Obviously, yes, the time period is definitely a big factor. And that's one reason why I did predict Team Liquid to win that match, even though I have TSM ranked number 1, because of the immediate success and coordination that I thought we would see out of the Immortals trio, plus Double Left has already played with those guys on CLG and all that stuff. And that was definitely on display, I thought, quite clearly. As for the FlyQuest game, I think that the FlyQuest game deserved, like, Onda and those guys really deserved kind of the spotlight there. They had some...
Their whole topside trio, I think, was incredible.
They did make some mistakes in the games, obviously, with some of the, big Baron objectives and stuff like that. But I thought the strategy that they brought into it and executed was really good. We've been seeing a lot more Zach play, especially with the prevalence of Tom Kench, who had like 80% presence or something like that, and being able to ult like both people back in when he's trying to save
and
a
working
carry.
with Keen to then shuffle them in further and stuff.
They just had a lot of things that boded really well for them. And I thought like that's where the focus of that match should have been.
Yeah, I also want to say in that game, FlyQuest TSM, like the draft for TSM was pretty bad. Like, where is that team composition supposed to win, and how are they supposed to start fights late? Because if they win early, the other team has Kalista, and they still won the bottom lane with the Kog'Maw. And then once that happens, it's like, is the Cho'Gath starting fights? Is the Kha'Zix starting fights? Is the Xerath or Tom Kench starting fights? They didn't really have a way to do anything. And I did want to talk quickly about, as far as you talk about like where the focus should be, because we were trying something different on the analyst desk before that game. And like, full disclosure, I want the analyst desk to be different this year. And before the game, we had planned to do a segment on Bjergsen. Like, we're going to follow him throughout the laning phase and throughout the mid and late game and just see how he performs. And I think there are certain things that we could have done better with that segment. I think after laning phase, we should have essentially evaluated giving grades after setting expectations. And then we should have done the same thing for the team fight phase, evaluate what he should have done, and then give a result. But like, the purpose of that segment wasn't to figure out exactly why TSM lost. It was literally just to evaluate Bjergsen's performance in that game. And the result was like pretty good. Like he did pretty good. He didn't hard carry. I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are about whether or not that's a good tone for Analyst Desk, because one of the main points of feedback I've had is like, you didn't talk about FlyQuest enough, which is the expectation that we've essentially set throughout all post-game segments is you talk about the winning team and what they did well.
So I like, having a different type of segment where you're analyzing specifically one player or something like that. I think that you should have switched plans, seeing how the game is going. If like there's something more interesting. I understand that you guys were like focusing on Bjergsen and you were watching him the whole game and like, you had this plan built up.
And for a lot of people that don't know, like with Analyst Desk segment, you're pre-building a lot of that stuff. So we need to be paying attention to Bjergsen 10 or 15 minutes.
You're pulling replays, you're etc.
If you pivot super last minute with that segment, then you're left with actually very little. For instance, we weren't actually I watched the rest of the game afterwards, but we were focusing on mid lane. So we didn't see how TSM got the advantage bottom lane. We didn't see how FlyQuest really pulled it back aside from team fights, but keep going.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the thing that just stood out, like I was so, when I was watching it, super focused on Anda because he's this substitute, right? Who came into FlyQuest and everyone's like, oh my God, they got
substitute.
They got what? These guys because they had high tiers Korean solo queue or whatever. And everyone's kind of like, checking out on those guys. But I really liked the Zach pick, how it fit into the overall strategy, and the way that they were able to use it and how he combined with the rest of the team. That would probably be my feedback. That was my only. What about you, Zale?
I mean, I think that those segments can be good. I think that people were maybe surprised that because my impression was people felt like it was piling on Bjergsen, and that's why it got a negative reception. But I do think that as a concept, those segments are good because I think that it's a failure of Analyst Desk when all it does is recap, right? Like for most people, you just watch the game. If all Analyst Desk is going to do is show me a couple replays of the game that I watched and then say, good job, then like, why am I watching Analyst Desk? I'm just going to go to the bathroom and get a drink. So like, I like the idea of having different types of things. And I also think that one of the things that's kind of sometimes overlooked is that it's also the caster's job to like praise and talk about those teams, right? And like I was casting that game, I felt like people like while the Analyst Desk did not talk about FlyQuest and praise them because they were focused on Bjergsen.
You were doing a lot of that.
I was doing that during the game, right?
And then we had a post game interview with Wild Turtle.
Exactly. Like we were talking very heavily about how well I felt their top trio were playing, how well in general this season I thought that Anda was playing, his pathing, his coordination, especially with Keen, who I thought played incredibly well. Keen was subbed in. Fly is supposed to be their starter. He was in a tough matchup against Bjergsen. So I think that because it's different, it's going to be like a bit of a immediate shock. But I think that if like part of one of the things I think could be really good for the broadcast is if we're looking at it as a total picture, right? Like if you talk about something on the cast a lot, then maybe the Analyst Desk shouldn't have to like hit it a ton, right? But it's always going to be the balance. And I see why people reacted negatively to the segment, and maybe that segment wasn't the best or wasn't the best timed or should have been adjusted. But as a concept, I think it's good.
And I think like the placement of the segment was kind of awkward. Right? Like there were a lot of other things to talk about during that game. People are probably wondering like, why did TSM lose both of these games? And like, that's not what this segment set itself out to do. But when they're expecting us to explain why TSM lost to FlyQuest, and all we do is talk about Bjergsen, even if we're saying like, man, he hit a lot of skill shots and there wasn't much more he could have done during the laning phase, and like here, maybe he could have done a little bit better, but they didn't win. Like they see it as blame on Bjergsen. So in that way, like the segment landed, I think, in the wrong place, even if I would totally try it again and try and execute it better and do segments more like that in the future.
Yeah. So as far as those types of segments, I think that when it is going to be positioned right after a big game like that, and there's a huge story, I think that those always kind of have to at least correlate
a little bit.
They always have to correlate at least with the biggest story right now, right? Because that is, like you're saying, 0-2 TSM. That's a very big story. This is the most popular team in the league. And that could be either focusing on how FlyQuest won or whatever, and you can do it, and you don't have to be a boring recap of the game. Right? It could be a focus on one player, but I feel like the ones that are right after a game like that with a big story, you have to be able to change gears to the big story. Whereas if you wanted to specifically do something like the Bjergsen one that you wanted to do, I think that those would almost always be better as doing all that pre-work and plan that you're talking about, that's hard to ship
Yeah.
before, and then prepping it as
Yeah.
like maybe something going into a day or like one of the opening segments or something like that, rather than right after, ooh, there's this big story, everyone's thinking about this. Wait, why are they talking about Bjergsen again? Reddit's already flaming them, or in that type of stuff. So I can see why
I think this is just an aside. Like, if Bjergsen would have done well that game, I think that segment lands on social media like amazingly.
Because it would have been more in line with the big story of the game.
Exactly. Yeah,
It's making, you don't want...
And it was kind of a big risk we took before. And it's like, we're going to follow Bjergsen and we're going to try this. We're going to do it no matter what because it's going to be cool.
We want the story to fit the game, not the game to fit the story. Right?
Yeah,
exactly. And
kind
it's
of.
like, but either way, we can talk some about CLG too. They also started O2, which was pretty surprising. You had them first, we both had them third, right? So definitely people had high expectations for this team, and a little bit like you talked about CL, I was expecting CLG to come pretty hot out of the gate because it felt like these are guys that should fit together. It felt
I just noticed that you're pointing a lot now instead of saying names. Some people still watch on SoundCloud.
Oh, Kobe.
But we can do that.
That's true. Kobe.
Back to our roots, Azale. We a podcast.
Okay. Podcast. My bad.
Continue, please.
So, like you were talking, Kobe, about TL and how you were expecting them come firing out of the gate, and that's kind of one of the reasons you predicted them over TSM. I was actually expecting CLG to come out very strong. I was expecting that this core, they still had both solo laners who were performing very well from last time. They got what everyone considered to be a pretty good upgrade in the jungle. Someone who seems like they're in the same mindset. They've talked so positively about Biofrost and didn't look too good. Nothing was really working.
No. As far as me trying to figure out whether I'm jumping off the CLG hype train, my answer is going to be no.
It's early. You can hold on to that.
It's too early. It is too early.
You already bought
to
a first-class ticket. You gotta ride it out a little bit.
You got to stay at least for 3 weeks. Like at least 6 games in is when I'm going to reconsider. And that's kind of how I go with a lot of the preseason expectations right here is there's a lot of variance in best of one. Side selection is important, right? Who gets to pick which side? Whether or not that draft went well is important. Whether or not you had the right read on the meta is important. And in retrospect, I feel like CLG had 2 drafts that were worse than the opponents is one. I think Huhi was not ready on the Zilean pick or ready to play against Zilean, and he's one of their best players and one of their main shot callers. So when he's in either a negative matchup or one he's not comfortable in, the team is going to look a lot worse. And then the real red flag that I have, because I'm willing to write off the draft, is Stixay looked bad. Stixay had really bad positioning in a lot of those games, and they were not really winning lanes. So if that doesn't turn around after 3 weeks is when I'm going to bail. But for now, I'm all aboard CLG.
Yeah, I mean, Stixay was the biggest concern for me too, because even last split, like last year, when he wasn't as hot as he had been in 2016 with MSI and their championship and everything like that, when their lane wasn't going well, I still felt like he performed very, very well in the late game fights. I always felt like that was a really big strength of him because he's known as this really strong mechanical player. But in both of the games, in game 1, he gets hit by back-to-back Sejuani ults from like Svenskeren, sorry, it was. And that kind of cost them both their late game 5v5s against C9. And then in game 2, on the Caitlyn, he kind of walks forward into a Malzahar ult, and that kind of cost them a late game team fight as well. It just felt like his positioning wasn't really there. Their lane wasn't very dominant. And if the bot lane is struggling, it's gonna be hard, I think, especially in the meta where it's so bot lane centric.
Yeah, I definitely agree. They look like it's going to be a little bit longer before the ramp up starts to take off for me. But what I am willing to buy right now is the cryptocurrency.
Echo Fox
that you're talking about.
You're in?
Yeah, I'm all in. Azale, we talked about it at the what's it called? NA LCS tonight.
Yeah.
Because it's only been 2 games, right? And this is still the team that everyone's like, okay, but wait for bad games and then it's gonna crash. But
Kobe's buying low.
The thing about that, exactly.
They play Cloud9 and TSM next week, Kobe.
You can't wait until they're already at the top to buy, because then you're buying expensive ass cryptocurrencies, right?
Yeah.
I gotta buy when it's cheap.
He's trying to make money.
So
the whole reason.
That's all I need. I'm in.
Okay, so this is there are 4 undefeated teams.
Yep.
Now, Cloud9 plays Echo Fox on Saturday, and 100 Thieves plays Team Liquid on Saturday. So after Saturday, there will only be 2 undefeated teams. And then obviously they all play again on Sunday. And Cloud9 plays 100 Thieves. So there's a chance that's a 3-0 versus 3-0 game. of those 4 teams, Cloud9, Echo Fox, 100 Thieves, Team Liquid, who is the most likely to end week 2 undefeated?
Oh,
I'll go right now.
go for it.
I got my answers
Team
ready.
Liquid.
Is it Echo Fox?
I think Team Liquid and Echo
Team
Fox.
Liquid.
And Echo Fox. Echo Fox plays Cloud9 TSM. Team Liquid plays
So
100
we're saying
Thieves.
2, or we're saying the most likely?
The most likely.
Team Liquid for me then.
Because
Oh,
Team
only
Liquid
one.
plays Clutch.
Okay.
I mean, if you think
I thought you got to pick the winner.
if you think 2
Pick 'em
teams
both.
will be
No, he's saying
undefeated,
over the
that's
whole week,
fine.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. 100 Thieves. If you're picking Team Liquid, it can't be 100 Thieves.
Yeah.
If you're
Oh, over the whole week. Okay, not
Yeah.
just the first matchup
yeah,
then.
end the week 4-0. Because someone
Yeah.
probably will do it. Yeah, you can look at the schedule.
So while you guys are looking at the schedule, I just want to say I've actually been very surprised and happily surprised by how well Licorice started off.
Mhm.
I think that C9 has come out of the gate really well, and I think people can be very happy with how well he's performed.
Mhm.
It's going to be super interesting for me this week for C9 because I thought Licorice looked good in the first week. You know, his second game on Kled, he was popping off. The first game on GP, obviously, he got put behind by dives and things that were happening. Their jungler was behind and all this sort of stuff. But I kind of give him a bit of a pass on that because he still ended up being pretty good in the rest of the game. He's playing Huni and Someday this week, right? This is the real test. If you're a C9 fan and C9 does well this week and Licorice does well this week,
You get to trash
You're
talk
like-
everyone in the world.
yeah, I mean, you start thinking, you start seeing the NALCS trophy in your eyes,
Yeah.
right? Like if he can go toe to toe with
Gonna have to clean your
Someday,
keyboard after that game.
Someday and Huni, then I think they're legit championship threat, right? Immediately you're
Yeah.
thinking, hot damn, this guy's really,
Yeah.
really good. And
I can see it in your eyes, Azale.
yeah, because that's exciting, right? Because while we have had a lot of really good NA junglers and things coming through, it's been a while since a new NA
An
top
NA
laner
soul, yeah, exactly.
or
any
even
solo
yeah,
player.
just soul laners in general have come through and been really, really strong. Like when you think about mid lane, there's some guys who have come up here and there and like, oh, good in scrims, this and that. Hasn't really come through. Lorlo, there was a lot of promise, but Lorlo, you know, while he's solid, he's not like tip top, right? And Licorice maybe has an opportunity to do that. That would be very exciting if he can go toe to toe. But obviously, these are some very tough matchups, right? Who did he play in week 1? I think it was he played against Lorlo and Darshan. The Darshan game, they got put far behind, but you know the rest of the team was doing very well. He ended up
Camped
catching
that
up.
GP.
Second game, he did smash, but now he's playing against some very tough solo laners and guys who are very lane focused. Someday has always had a very strong CSD. Huni, you know, wants to get a counter pick and smash you. That's going to be the big test for
You gotta
C9.
buy in early, Azale, before he beats.
Are
those
you
two
buying
guys.
in now?
Do you think he'll beat them, or
Are
do
you
think
buying Licorice
the test
on the
is
stock
gonna
market?
be too hard?
So
The open exchange.
after week 1, I don't think he'll beat them, but
As
No
long as the team
Licorice
wins.
going for
Will
you?
the team win?
But I think that the team can win. Yeah, I think that he looked good enough in week 1 that I don't think he will be
Yeah.
the reason they lose, right? And maybe he can exceed that and just slam Huni, and then I'm like, oh my god, like I'm selling my house, I'm buying all in, right? But I think that he looked so good in week 1 for like the first 2 games that this guy's played in NALCS. He should be super proud, and C9 fans should be very, very happy. And
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to be the reason they lose very many games.
I mean, the disrespect from a Cloud9's perspective that was thrown at that team, right? We
Yeah.
lost the offseason.
Yep.
Was one of Jack's tweets with like a winky face afterwards. Spence Garen was the problem.
Jack was
winky
on
face.
fire.
Yeah. I mean, you got to feel good after that week, and you would feel great after this one because everyone on the show, none of us had Cloud9 in the top 3
Yeah.
in our power ranking.
We all had him 4th or 5th, right?
Yep.
Which to be fair, like it's still we're saying they're a solid
Yeah.
playoff team, right? But I think that it's something to really get excited about for Cloud9 fans if they do really well this week. This is the one where it's all eyes on Cloud9, I think, this week.
So you still think Liquid is most likely to end the week undefeated?
I do also because not only because
Schedule.
everyone's looking at this roster and going, "Oh my God, they're
They
nuts,"
play 100 Thieves
but
clutch.
also the schedule, is which both of those teams are gonna be interesting, right?
Yeah.
Those are gonna be interesting games, and these are best of ones.
Yeah.
So it still has a lot of
And no one has
Drama
a
to it.
free path to it. Like TL, yes,
Yeah.
they are 2-0, but their second game, I actually felt they should have lost to Optic.
Yeah.
Optic had them outscaled and then tragically misplayed the last team fight where it's an Ornn ult that never gets redirected. It's a one-man shockwave on a stone plate Thresh. It's a Taric ultimate that's down before the fight even starts. Everything went wrong in that last team fight for Optic, and you know they were playing a very heavily scaling comp with the Kog'Maw, and
Yeah.
it looks like I'm like, wow, they're gonna win this game. If you look on paper, you turn off the nameplates, you're like,
Yep.
this team wins, and Optic didn't win, but you know TL was still challenged even in that second game. So I don't think any team is infallible at this point.
Yeah, I've learned very little after week 1 as far as the overall strength of the teams, other than it's going to be really hard to predict all of these games. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. 100 Thieves is another interesting one. I don't know if you guys want to talk about it at all, but they are another 2-0, right? A lot of people had them as a playoff team, but I don't think people really had them as like a tip-top team.
Yeah, that was a ranking the convincingness of the 2-0s. 100 Thieves would probably be the least convincing. It was like a 60-minute game against Optic was their first matchup, and then a pretty good win against CLG.
Yeah.
Right?
I had to pee so bad during that show.
Yeah, that's actually...
This is behind the scenes info here, Kobe. Tell us all about it.
You just brought it all back when you're talking about the 60-minute game.
This is behind the scenes analyst desk knowledge. So normally on the analyst desk, the casters end the game, they fill for about a minute, they toss to the interview, we go to the analyst desk. They tell us, be like, we're going to do it differently today. As soon as the game's over, they're sending it to you. Then you're thrown to the interview. Then you're going to come back to you, and we're like okay, sure.
Yeah.
We learn afterwards.
At half an hour.
Because Kobe had to go.
At half an hour into the game, I buzzed in.
Man had to pee.
I really got to go bad. That was half an hour in. It went to 64 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. I think it's worth it.
These are the struggles. This is what Kobe goes through.
It's funny because we actually really liked doing the desk that way. We were able to very quickly do the
Good.
post game.
I'm glad.
Then they did the interview, and then we did big picture discussion afterwards. And we're actually going to try and do that like every week as one of our different looks for the analyst desk.
I
So
really
Kobe,
liked not peeing my pants. I'm going to try and do that every week.
if you ever really need to go, just
I
like
commit to that too.
I'm
I'll go
sure
for
we
that.
have the tech
Yeah.
that you can just be like, I'm going to take a break, and then we just like me and Mark will color cast with your play-by-play. We'll cross the audio signals, and you'll just be gone for 5 minutes.
I at 55 minutes, I
Give
asked
Dash
him.
his shot. Get him in there.
Yeah, we'll just analyst desk will cast for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I was thinking of asking how big of a deal would it be.
If I just left.
Not left. I was asking for a bottle. I was like, how big of a deal? Because the caster area is like up and to the left.
Ooh, but
I was
people
like-
at the top of the
I
stands
was like,
have full view.
Can
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
easily.
can for sure see you.
That's why I didn't ask.
The people at the top
did-
can for sure see you.
I never even asked, but that was a thought that passed through my mind.
Can you imagine
'Cause-
the pictures that went?
I just want to describe, like, this is the most pain that I've ever been in from having to pee. Like, I
Yeah.
could not
Yeah.
actually even run to the bathroom. Like, I had to like weirdly
penguin
waddle.
waddle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's
See, I think what you should have done. You were with
that.
Freak, right?
Yeah.
Freak could have solo casted for a couple minutes.
It,
Yeah.
it
Just
took
run
me
out
more than
there.
a couple minutes.
This is why players pausing in the game to go to the bathroom is not that big a deal.
There you go.
No, I
Yeah,
big deal.
completely
Totally
commiserate.
fine.
No.
That's it for NALCS. I think it's time
For
to
ending
move
on that?
Twitter. That's the capper.
That's the highlight.
Yeah. All right, we got some Twitter questions. The Monty Mole says, O2 start for CLG Gaming. You getting nervous about your power rankings yet? I am
I
nervous.
think he's talking to you.
Yeah, I am nervous, but I am not daunted. I will continue on the CLG train as I suggested. Week 1 results are what they are. I think if you go back in like power ranking history, we're never right. I'm fine if it's wrong at some point, but I think CLG still has a good chance of being good.
That's cop out to say that we're never exactly right, though.
And even for me,
TSM's own 2, you worried at Kobe?
yeah,
A little, yeah.
TSM has
I am.
never been 0-2 before.
I am
right?
a little
But
worried, honestly.
even with TSM never having gone 0-2 to start a season,
You still think they're number one?
I still think that it's like they have a good shot to be there, right? And I want to see how they look in a couple weeks because this is a team that it was very surprising to me, especially the bot lane, right? Mike Young, I'm going to be honest, I don't think he played great, but I don't think he played super bad. I think he played probably around where his level is. He could get better, he could, whatever. But Sven and Mithy, I thought played pretty below their level, and especially for the focus on communication, you gotta ride it out. Gotta wait to see what happens.
All right, Aaron at the Fantasy G. Looking back at week 1, it seemed like Optic Gaming gave both TL and 100 Thieves a very competitive game. Do you think this makes them a threat, and do you think TSM will struggle against them as well? Are they top 6 but had a hard week 1?
I think it makes their matchup with TSM super interesting.
Yeah.
Because as we said at the end of last week when I was talking to Azael on NA LCS Tonight, in addition to kind of the ramp up time, and you're talking about players for TSM playing below their perceived level, the pressure is intense with that team, right?
Yeah.
We instantly saw like even a bunch of TSM fans, Fleming TSM, everybody's out for throat, right? Out for blood.
Mhm.
Like I feel like that is gonna make the next week of practice difficult.
Stressful,
especially for Mike. He's super young, right? Everyone talks about how strong he is mentally and how great his communication is and all this type of stuff. But that's something extra where Optic, they just seem so upbeat, right? They're just focused on hard work. They're like, yeah, we expected to have to work harder than everybody. We're gonna grind so much harder. We're gonna put in all this effort, and like we were extremely close in our games, right? And those games were extremely close. Like they almost. They could have come away with victories in either of those.
Yeah, I mean, Sven Skjern talked about the stress of playing on TSM and how much more relaxed C9 is by comparison. So that's certainly going to add to it. And I'm a little bit definitely more bought in to Optic than I was last week. Actually, even before their second game, talking to Zabutin made me believe in them a little bit more as far as
sexy French accent.
Yeah, it was a little bit. It got me.
We will outwork everyone.
Do a French but good try.
But they are the team that outworks.
Well, it was talking about that, but it was also like talking about recruiting for mental strength, talking about they're trying to train the players to be able to give and receive criticism more openly without it being as much ego attached, talking about how hard they want to work and how impressed he's been by the mentality of the players and really kind of indexing heavily towards hard work and good attitude. And so far, I mean, yes, they did lose their games, but those were two tough matchups. And I think this team is certainly a threat to improve a lot and could be moving on.
And attitude is great. That goes a certain amount of distance, but I am more heartened by Arrow's performance. Because I got to be honest, I did have pretty big question marks for him, how he ended the last season. But Arrow definitely came out and kind of put a lot of those to rest. Like he definitely had a good individual performance as well.
Yeah. If I had to re-rank, I think I'd move them up in my power rankings a little bit, but I still
That's the only way that they could go. You can't put them lower. You had them 10.
Well, it's like that one time when who did the 80 carry power rankings that had Keith in 10th with a down arrow?
He did all the Mark.
That was Mark.
Mark Z did the down arrow, yeah.
Optic is not 10th with a down arrow.
Oh my god.
They are 9th with an up
Golden
arrow.
Guardians 10th with a down arrow?
Right now, yeah.
Yeah.
Right now, after that week one. But we're moving on. This 1 week, can't overreact. Minor changes in the power rankings, if any. That is going to do it for this episode of The Dive. As always, you can find us on YouTube, SoundCloud. We're also on iTunes, Pocket Casts, a lot of other podcast platforms if that is how you want to find us. Keep sending us those Twitter questions, #TheDiveLOL. You can find us on Instagram, on Twitter, send us questions, do all that cool stuff. And NA LCS pre-show starts Saturday, 1:30 p.m. Pacific time. See you there.
See you there.